We're now ready to begin our fourth lesson here on our Level 1 course, Creating Colors. We're going to talk about everything you need to know to create colors in Photoshop. So we're going to take a look at it. We're going to divide this lesson up into three sections. Number one, we're going to talk about the different color modes, particularly the RGB and CMYK color mode. In the next part, we'll talk about creating colors, solid colors that is. In the last part, we will talk about creating gradients. Now, there are three main color spaces here in Photoshop. There's actually a few more, but the ones you're going to use the most often are either going to be the RGB color space, the CMYK, or the Greyscale. I'm going to open something up here. This is an image I created for the class only. Again, I'll come to my recents. Now, the two main modes as far as color is concerned, of course, Greyscale would be a black and white mode, but as far as color is concerned, you have RGB and CMYK. RGB stands for red, green, and blue, and CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, the K being the black. Now, RGB is the color mode used by monitors, projectors, and other electronic devices. Every pixel on your monitor has three diodes in it. There's a red, a green, and a blue, and each one has 256 different brightness values. The range is from 0, which would be pure black, to 255, which would be pure white. Because of that, you can get about 16.7 million colors. Just imagine one diode could be 0, next one 0, and then 1. You could have 002, 003, 111, 222, 100, 200. All these different combinations of different brightnesses of those three color diodes give you millions of colors. As a result, the RGB color space is going to have a lot more colors than the CMYK color space. Now, CMYK is the color space used for printing, and it uses inks to create colors. Just imagine having a bucket of cyan, bucket of magenta ink, bucket of yellow, and a bucket of black inks. You can mix these inks together to create all the different printable colors. Now, if you want to print a photograph, which is in RGB colors, and you're going to print it using the CMYK colors, it'd be nice to know exactly what the RGB image is going to look like when it's printed out using CMYK colors. It'd be nice to be able to convert the RGB colors into the CMYK equivalents, and we can do that right here in Photoshop. Remember, since there's a lot more colors in the RGB color space, there might not actually be an equivalent in the CMYK color space, and therefore the color has to be changed into the closest possible match. Now, a lot of you may be saying, well, if that's CMYK and it's created with inks, and what are we looking at on our monitor here? There's not ink on our monitor. Well, that's true. What we're getting is an RGB interpretation of what it thinks the CMYK would look like. That's why you're never going to be able to take your print and hold it up to the monitor and get an exact match. Again, there's not inks on your screen. It's just the computer coming up with an approximation of what the CMYK should look like using RGB colors to do so. Now, as mentioned, the RGB color space has a lot more colors than the CMYK color space, and this graphic here represents that. We see the outer circle here representing RGB, and this inner circle representing the CMYK. There's just a slight color difference here. Hopefully that shows up on your monitor. The colors that RGB has that CMYK doesn't is going to tend to be your bright colors, your real bright greens, bright reds, etc. In fact, just to show you, this red that's in this RGB color space, the closest thing that CMYK can get to it would be this color red in the CMYK circle. Now, the problem with Photoshop is that RGB is the default color mode. Now, if you're creating electronic graphics and you're choosing colors for those graphics, RGB is fine. You can pick any color you want. But if you're creating graphics that are going to be printed and you're choosing colors to use in those graphics, you have to stay away from the RGB colors that fall outside of the CMYK color space. You need to choose RGB colors that have a CMYK equivalent. If you're working in a program like Illustrator or InDesign, CMYK is the default. You won't even be tempted by these bright colors. Now I'm going to open up a couple images here. Come down here to the mini bridge. Hit the browse files. Going to have to wait for the bridge to open. I'm going to come over here to the navigation bar, go to folder number 4, colors, and I'll open up both of these. I'm going to select both of them and hit the enter key. And I'm going to jump over here to number 1. Now, Whenever you're going to print something on a printing press, it has to be converted into CMYK for technical reasons. The printer has to be able to generate out 4 separate printing plates, the cyan, yellow, magenta, and the black printing plate. If you leave it in RGB and you give it to the printer, somebody is going to have to turn it into CMYK. There's a lot of them and the printer does it, he's probably going to charge you for it, so it's better for you to do it yourself. It's very easy to turn something into CMYK, and if you know the job is going to be for print, I suggest turning it into CMYK right away. Now, just to show you some of the color differences here, this is an RGB image. To turn your image into CMYK, we come up to the image menu, choose mode, and then CMYK. Now it's going to ask you that, or at least tell you that you're about to convert this to CMYK, and this is the color profile that you're going to be using. As far as these color profiles, read that booklet that I gave you. It came with a course. There's a section in there on color management that will explain it all. Now in real life, so to speak, I would say don't show again. But here in a class, I'd like this message to come up if it needs to come up again, so I'm not going to do that. But again, in real life, I turn that on so I don't see this message. Watch the difference. You think you're going to get this color, but when you get your prints back from the shop, you get that color. That's how drastic some of these changes can be. Again, most of this is going to happen when you're adding artificial elements to an image, such as text or some type of a drawing. Jump over to this picture here. When I switch a photograph to CMYK, you don't see that much difference. Very, very subtle, unless some guy's wearing a neon green t-shirt. So your typical photograph, if you go out and photograph somebody found in a natural setting, most of those colors fall within the CMYK color space. Now watch when I convert this image. Come to image menu, mode, CMYK, we get a little message, hit OK. Now if you do this yourself, you're probably more likely to see the difference, but we can see some subtle changes in the red and subtle changes in the hair here. I'm going to hit Control Z before. You can see the hair got a little bit darker when it was RGB. I'll switch back, Control Z again. Hard to tell there. Come here and look at the red. There's red, one shade of it, a little bit brighter when I switch it back to the RGB. So with most photographs, you're not going to see much difference between the RGB and the CMYK. Again, it's those artificial colors that are most likely to show some difference. Now the other color mode that you might want to print in would be Greyscale. Greyscale simply just uses one printing plate, a black printing plate. Everything's created with black, so you have just basically shades of gray. You come up here to the image menu, mode, and to the Greyscale. Now Greyscale tells you that all the color information will be discarded. Now there are other ways to make black and white images that you can still print on a printing press, and we'll take a look at those in the level 2 course. But I will say this, Greyscale is just the simplest way to make a black and white. It's not the best way, but if you're not getting paid a lot of money to do it, it's real easy. You just hit discard, and you got yourself a black and white image. That can be printed on a printing press. I'll hit Control Z, get that back to RGB. Now as far as your own inkjet or your own laser printer, you can just leave it in RGB. In fact, most printers recommend to leave it in RGB. The reason being is they don't need this converted to CMYK for the technical purpose of creating printing plates. In fact, on your inkjet printer, some of these things have 8 inks, so they don't even really have cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So most of the printers would prefer you just leave it in RGB, and it will convert it to whatever it needs to, do to get out a good print. It's only when you're going to a printing press and we're using the process printing method that you need to convert it into CMYK. And again, if you don't, somebody's going to do it for you, and if there's enough of them, they're going to charge a lot of money. So those are the main color spaces that you'll use in the professional world. There are others. There's LAB, hexadecimal, used for the websites. There's HSB. The 3 that we just discussed, RGB, CMYK, and Greyscale, are the 3 we'll cover in this course. In the next lesson, we'll take a look at creating solid colors. And if you're making print graphics, we'll show you how to stay away from those RGB colors that can't be printed, the ones that don't have an equivalent in the CMYK color space.